Good day, everyone. My name is Karen Furtado. I'm a partner with Strategy Meets Action, and I'd love to welcome you all to the webinar. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your console, you'll notice there are a number of widgets that you can use. The couple that I really want to point out to you is the Q&A widget, which you can be using to submit questions. We will be reviewing the questions throughout the webcast, and we'll take a Q&A period at the end of the presentations. We will also be capturing all those questions, so if we can't get to the question, we will certainly follow up following the webinar. If you do need to make any adjustments in the slide area of your screen, certainly you can drag it from any of the 4 arrows, specifically on the top right side. The audio for this webinar is going to be coming through your speakers. If you have any technical difficulty, please just click on the Help widget, the question mark icon, and we'll cover a number of the technical issues that you may have. Now, on to our topic of today, the future of cloud for P&C insurers. I'd like to turn it over to Rajan, who will bring us into the webinar.
Great. Thanks, Karen, and welcome, everyone. Happy Thursday. As we kind of look at the discussion for today, there's a lot of content, and so if we go to the next slide, you can see the speakers. So excited to have Strategy Meet Action and Microsoft hosting this webinar. So with us today, you'll see that we do have Karen, who obviously is focused on helping insurance companies through the transformation. We've also got Dennis Vanderlip, who's a director within Microsoft and is also focused on helping the financial services and insurance clients through enabling their business solutions with Microsoft. And then you've got Del Fadoon, who is focused within our insurance practice on the legacy cloud and helping companies replace their core systems. And then you've got myself, who will bring it home, same and similar with Dale, focused on our insurance practice and helping clients everything from the strategy, operations, and the technology transformation. So I think with that, we've got a full slides and content. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. And so when we talk about the agenda, so there's 4 key components, as you can see here. Karen will start off with providing the current view of the cloud applications and what's going on in the marketplace. And then Dennis will focus on the growing presence of the cloud platforms and what's happening with Azure and impacting that within the industry. We've got Dale, who will cover the key considerations for cloud migration, and as you think about it from an enterprise perspective and then into the core system perspective. And then I'll talk about what we're doing in and around the whole cloud platform aspect from what we call our Insurance Nexus platform. And so I think with that, we'll round it out, and then hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. So with that, Karen, I'll hand it over to you, and we can kick it off with the first section.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. To me, this is not a, quote, cloudy area. The future of cloud is certainly here. We see many insurers as they're going down what now has become their transformation journeys. And I will say that well over 50% of insurers now see themselves in that particular state, in a state of transformation. Cloud is very fundamental to a lot of the capabilities that we are looking to now bring to market as we transform our companies. Let me just talk for a few minutes about what that transformation looks like, what that lens is that we see many insurers using on their projects and initiatives, and how cloud intersects with that. I use these 3 lenses as our topic areas of where we see the transformation moving forward. Certainly at the top here we have digital business. I do not think I go to any insurer who is not thinking of themselves interoperating in the digital economy and in the digital world we live in today. We are in a digital state, and therefore we are now finding ourselves needing to operate as a digital business. I think that is maybe a different lens than just saying, oh, we want to be able to push particular applications or capabilities in the market. It's not so much an internal choice, but it's more a reaction to this is where we are as a society. And therefore, I think there are a number of initiatives that insurers have underway and have the potential to take on that are all under that umbrella of digital insurance. Intersecting with that, on the left side, you'll see what we call those foundational technologies. These are the technologies, the tried and true technologies that we rely on for the very business that we produce. And I'll go over what a number of those applications are, but it's much of the infrastructure that we know of today. And so how is the transformation impacting the foundational technologies? And we'll review that in a second. And the last of the three lenses is really wrapped all around the transformational technologies. Even at SMA, we previously would have more referred to these as emerging technologies. I think we are beyond that emergence phase. We're now in the transformation phase. These technologies are now impacting any part of our business that we look at. Those transformational technologies are impacting foundational technologies. An example would be whether you're a company that's using robotic process automation, AI, machine learning. If you're looking at IoT devices, etc., there is this world of technologies that are intersecting with the world that we know of today, the foundational world we know of. And they come together to really support the digital business of the future. It takes all three to make the situation of transformation truly come to light and for insurers to really live in that experience. For today's conversation, I really wanted to focus on the foundational technologies because they are going through some significant, quote, transformation themselves. Around the outside edge, you will see a host of technologies that many of you are using, whether it's your policy system, your billing system, your claims systems, reinsurance, and then we'll have the host of rating, workflow, rules engines, correspondence, ECM, CCM, forms management, distribution, call center, and the host of different aspects that you're using from portals to digital experiences. All of these technologies, foundationally, believe it or not, at one point were all on-premise type of applications. This is where the transformation has started to occur. We start to see the intersection of BI and data, predictive analytics, new data sources, empowering new experiences. When we see insurers really focus on that less than 5 data elements and you can have a quote, well, it's not that they're living without all those other data elements. We're certainly looking and sourcing all of the data as a proxy for the data that's not being keyed. So that is impacting how these applications work. And then if we go to the orange, this is where I say we really are starting to tap into that new era of computing. The reality is, as businesses, as an economy, we have entered a new era of computing. Fundamental to that new era of computing are the aspects of technology changes that are microservices and API, the breaking down of the applications to be what we would call more manageable components. It does harken back to the days of SOA a bit, but it is larger grain modules that we can upgrade at a much greater frequency because this has been a legacy implication to us as insurers is how do we upgrade. We look at APIs because we're looking at the catalog of APIs to have access and be open to the external experiences that we're trying to provide in the market and to consume the data and have the interactions with many of the, quote, insurtechs or other technologies that are available in the market. We look at serverless computing and cloud, the ability to have much greater computing capabilities and capacity than we ever could have had in an on-prem environment at a right size cost and in a right size period of time. No longer do you have to go out and source your own servers, etc., that they are brought to you and the solutions are brought to you so you can focus on the business capabilities. And then the low-code, no-code environments. These are all what I would say here today, fundamental changes in our computing world. And therefore, they are coming to insurance and are having impact on insurance. And so the perspective view I'd like to give you all is, I always talk about the Steve Jobs quote, where we look ahead 2 years and we will tend to overestimate the impact of change, and when we look ahead 10, we will underestimate the impact of change. And we are living in a time where we can go back 10 years and look at what the impact of change was. If I go back in the world of cloud 10 years, the orange here represents the areas that were much more deployed or open to being deployed from a cloud perspective, right? We have a lot of internal systems. They were HR or payroll, CRM, enterprise type services. They were the ones that were cloud deployed. Pretty much everything else in blue, everything along the life cycle of insurance, we were figuring our way through this. There was some hosting absolutely going on, but as far as pure cloud deployment, there were just very, very small pockets. The technology in that environment, I would say I did see some test environments that were operating in the cloud, and we saw some sandboxing capabilities. What were insurers' concerns overall? Oh my gosh, security. Security was the number one concern. I know in the number of surveys I did, it really changed. If I look back on my surveys 10 years ago, it was the number one reason insurers weren't considering cloud, and I will say well less than 30% of insurers would consider a core system in the cloud by any means. So, whether it's security, reliability, where is the data located, what are the locations of these servers? We really were about risk avoidance. We saw this as a high-risk type of computing endeavor. There were fewer apps available. I mean, the reality was that it was not a plethora of apps that were available in the world, so we weren't in that place where we had learned experience. The APIs were fairly limited. We had integrations for sure, and we have had integrations for years, but APIs, small ways to be able to interoperate with multiple different data sources and new computing experiences really were very, very limited. And the fact was, we often were operating in what we would call a monolithic architecture. It was an older technology construct. How has that world changed in 10 years? I say it's been an incredible change. When we look to the plethora of orange that you see in the chart, there is no area that is not available in the cloud today. I don't care if you're looking at marketing and the way you market and the type of technology and data sources that you're using for marketing. As a matter of fact, we're measuring heavily on web traffic and the way we're connecting to the insurers from a, quote, very digital standpoint. Our products, the way we distribute the products, the type of technology we use to distribute the products. You all want to now do what-if analysis. How do I scale up? How do I have the computing power to really re-benchmark my book of business? I want that on demand. I want that policy that has 300 vehicles. I want that rated in less than 5 seconds. How do you do that? How do you accomplish all of this in your infrastructure? Well, what we're seeing now from a technology standpoint is now there's really full deployment of cloud-based systems. As a matter of fact, it's amazing the number of systems that are actually operating in the cloud. We've had an explosion of APIs. The world of APIs and systems available that can connect through APIs has truly, truly exploded on the scene. We now have apps. We have microservices. We have applications that have been designed for this very computing experience that we have. We're getting to serverless computing. I wouldn't say we're highly advanced. We've seen some pockets of that, and there's still a fair amount of hybrid cloud deployment, whether it be private or public cloud. You know, what are people's concerns now? It's really about the cost of scaling. It is not about security. It's geographic boundaries, cost of scaling, and, quote, vendor lock-in. So am I locked into a particular vendor? As a matter of fact, I've had clients who have actually gone cloud because they feel it's actually more secure and it's providing more security around the application than they have the capability to do or desire to do in their own operations. So cloud has truly given us a launch point to move forward from computing capability. I have one data point I'm going to wrap up with, which I think is really telling about the state of cloud computing, and this is a data point on focused on new core systems. So if you're buying a policy system, a billing system, a claim system, every year SMA collects all of the buying transactions that insurers made in the market, and we assess it from many different perspectives. This particular perspective is about cloud. 75% of every system bought this past year, every system, policy system, billing system, claim systems, were bought to be in the cloud. As a matter of fact, we see even a push out of on-prem with a number of companies now sourcing back to their solution provider and saying, take this on, and then it's deployed in the cloud. So we continue to see the on-premise numbers decrease. We continue to see the cloud numbers increase. And I think with just a few changes in the market, I know a number of solution providers running to this perspective, with that shift and change, we will see a much higher number. As a matter of fact, if I re-benchmark this a few different ways, I can tell you, aside from a few situations, we're probably operating at almost 90%. Absolutely incredible numbers from 10 years ago when we had so few deploying that way. So I think we should always be looking at our architectures and saying, how are they going to evolve and change? What's our flexibility? What's our agility? And I think the rest of our presentations today are going to lay the foundation for how we're thinking and really exploding in the insurance industry around cloud. So I'm going to turn it over to Dennis to take us forward from Microsoft's viewpoint.
Thank you very much, Karen. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Well, welcome to everybody. My name is Dennis Vanderlip. I'm the worldwide industry lead at Microsoft. And similar to the journey that Karen has talked about, we've been on that journey with our carriers also. And 4 years ago, when we approached a carrier and we talked about moving core systems to the cloud, the response was, no point in even having that discussion. There are too many regulatory issues. There's too many security issues. But if we move forward 2 years and had this conversation about moving core systems to the cloud, the response was, we get it. The cloud's inevitable. But right now, the timing isn't exactly right for us. And this wasn't so much a technology question or a security question or a regulatory compliance question anymore. It was more of a comfort level question. When we move forward to today, the response from our customers is, we get it, we understand that value proposition. Tell me, Microsoft, tell me, EY, how do we get there in a safe and compliant way? Carriers have a number of choices in terms of what cloud platform to choose. I want to go through a few reasons why customers choose the Azure Cloud. The first is this idea of trusted partnership. Microsoft has been an enterprise sales company, sales and software company for many years. We've been on that long innovation journey that carriers talked about. And so we're kind of uniquely positioned to be able to help our customers on that journey. The second area is around this idea of hybrid by design. It's no secret that Microsoft started on-prem just like our customers. We're on that journey to the cloud just as our customers are, and that puts us in a unique position. Many people think of cloud and on-prem as a black and white decision. It's not. It's very gray. There are many applications that make perfect sense to move to the cloud today. There are a number of applications that might not ever make it to the cloud. And so helping our customers on that journey from on-prem through hybrid to cloud is something that we feel uniquely positioned to do. The third, and probably the most important one, is the enterprise partnerships. And this call and the partnership between EY and Microsoft is a classic example. The cloud providers, including Microsoft, we don't offer line of business solutions to our customers. We offer cloud platforms to our customers. And it's only through that partnership together with E&Y that we can bring the line of business functionality and the value of the cloud to our customers. Microsoft can bring the cloud platform, and we understand the enterprise, but we don't deeply understand the insurance business. It's EY that brings the deep understanding of your business, the deep understanding of the technology that drives your business, and the intellectual property and the applications that can help run your business. For these last two, global scale and compliance, I'll cover off in these next couple slides. So just very briefly today, what is the Azure Cloud? The Azure Cloud is comprised of 54 global regions. That's not the number of data centers, that's the number of regions. There are multiple data centers in each region that provides an IaaS, a PaaS, and a SaaS platform for implementation of applications globally. This provides our carriers the ability to quickly scale geographically and even globally. It enables something that Karen talked about, and that is to be able to meet the needs of data residency requirements in whatever market you're working in by being able to keep your data where regulators require to keep your data. And it also allows you to operate and in a distributed fashion for both operations and disaster recovery. But I would argue that the greatest differentiator is around regulatory compliance. We understood early on in those conversations with our customers that being able to operate in a safe, secure, and regulatory compliant way was kind of the base level required to be able to move to the cloud. So for the last 4 years, we've spent a tremendous amount of time gaining more regulatory certifications than any cloud. And most importantly, we spent the time to educate regulators, because regulators are on this journey, to help us get to a position where customers, Microsoft, and the regulators feel comfortable that we can host data and applications in the cloud. So that's a very brief overview of the Microsoft Azure Cloud and how it can operate and support our customers in the highly regulated insurance environment. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Dale, who's going to talk a little bit more about the partnership between Microsoft and EY. Dale?
Thanks, Dennis. Hi, everyone. I'm Dale Fadoon, and I'll talk a bit about how do we get there, right? We just talked about the imperative to get to the cloud, and then we've talked about, what cloud do we want to choose. So as Dennis had pointed out, we need to figure out how do we get there in a safe and compliant manner. So let's talk about cloud strategy and cloud migration. So first off, when we at EY were looking to build a world-class consulting and managed services capability around the cloud, we thought, hey, it makes sense to start with our own business. So to that end, we've migrated a significant amount of our application portfolio to Azure. The process of that, we've become one of the largest consumers of Azure, so we've got a lot of experience in doing this to ourselves, and then we've basically applied the lessons learned from our ongoing enterprise cloud migration to inform our cloud strategy and our cloud migration methodologies. So example of that, understanding business requirements of the company and crafting modern solutions to meet them. So that means you're not just a cloud migration isn't just lifting and shifting everything into the cloud. You have to say, well, what are we really trying to do here? And what is the cloud? What are the different modern options? And let's modernize as we migrate. We create a core cloud team that'll skill up and then create initial proofs of concept, learn lessons and adjust, and drive the migration iteratively across the enterprise. So kind of taking an iterative methodology, and we'll get into that more in some of the coming slides. So these are just examples of the lessons that we learned that informed our methodology. In a world where almost all software will be delivered as a service and packaged core systems are now migrating to cloud-only platforms going forward, insurers can basically let the cloud happen to them, or we can work together to create an enterprise cloud strategy by evaluating how best to leverage the cloud and charting a proactive course to get there. So it starts with the business case. Look at how much of the current application portfolio can move to the cloud. So that's going to determine the costs of the program and the size of the savings. Important factors include data issues, legacy platforms, legal rules, security requirements, as we continue to talk about. So our approach is take an application inventory, look at the important factors for each one, and determine what's going to move to the cloud. So with our positive business case establishing the target, we choose our primary cloud provider, but keeping in mind that leveraging different SaaS solutions likely means you're going to end up with applications and data in different clouds. So what are the strategies to work and understand that data is going to be in different places, and how are we going to make sure that we are comfortable with that, can host it securely across all of them, and can get the performance that we need across all of these different systems. So the end state solution architecture, possibly resulting in a hybrid cloud long-term solution. So, maybe we're not going to get everything to the cloud, and it's going to be we're going to be working within different clouds. It will require a new IT operating model. So to properly leverage the cloud, your operating model is going to include DevOps and dynamic scaling infrastructure, which then requires a focus on automation, instrumentation, monitoring. These are things that might not be part of your IT ops today or as robust as they're going to need to be going forward. Other important point is building cross-organization coordinated responses for both ops and development teams. That's kind of a core principle with DevOps. So with DevOps, if we're saying that the developers are now able to spin up the environment and get the data and build all of that quickly and dynamically themselves, then also it's going to go both ways. So then when operations is out there in production and trying to support our applications, you need to be able to quickly cross-coordinate with developers to understand how that was, what that data looks like or how that environment might have been set up. Another important paramount point is data design. So when you're creating your overall cloud solution, we're thinking about things like latency. It's an issue for many transactions, so data management and transfer will drive network, storage, and integration design for our holistic enterprise cloud solution. So let's think about an example here, an insurance example. A policy bind currently in an on-prem world triggers several data-intensive downstream feeds, right? And these often must happen in real time or near real time, or maybe they're real time and they need to send a confirmation of success back to the core system before the system moves on to take payment and distribute policy documents, to the agent or to the customer. Well, if you think of that transaction now, if part of that is going to be in the cloud, then we may have to redesign the end-to-end transaction to be asynchronous and require less data transmission in our overall cloud-based solution. So these are some of the data concepts that we'll have to build into our strategy and into our overall design. Another important factor in the cloud solution design are security requirements, of course. Can we leverage multi-tenant SaaS solutions wherever available, or do we have particular reasons that our data needs to be cordoned off? Do we deal with PII or data sovereignty laws, and how are we going to design around those? Do we have specific security requirements that require novel solutions from our cloud providers? Maybe we think that we do, but many don't, but sometimes we will. And the cloud basically has different security options to deal with all of this. So it's, in fact, probably more secure than the on-prem environments at this point, but we do need to design for it and ensure that we're creating the right security solution. On top of the technical solution, we, of course, also have to think about our people. Train up or hire in a core cloud team, but also assess readiness of the broader staff, as well as our providers, and then the systems, finances, and overall stakeholders. A lot of people that are going to be impacted by a modernization of all of your applications in your platform and then the move to the cloud. So while planning for the training of staff, that core cloud team can begin the migration with a minimum viable cloud application and then create an iterative feedback loop that adjusts as lessons are learned and issues are resolved. So let's talk a bit about that with the next slide here. So a deeper dive into the iterative migration process. In the cloud strategy, we established the apps that we're targeting for migration. So here we established the tactical approach for each application. The options, often referred to as the 5 Rs, are retire applications that don't provide as much business value as they cost to run. So that's a simple one. Replace anything that you can with modern SaaS applications that are therefore cloud native. Retain some applications, but move them onto the cloud and then wrap them by adding a modern integration layer, API or ETL or microservices, as we were talking about, that exposes functionality to other applications and therefore derives more value than the application did when in its on-prem state. Rehost some more recent applications that can run efficiently in the cloud. So if you have some that are cloud native that you've been running on-prem and it's easy and they run the same way and they've got dynamic scaling and whatnot, then that one's easy, just rehost. And then the real complex one and the real important one is re-envisioning, and this usually applies to customized or core applications. You've got to rebuild these with the cloud at the core, leveraging best practices such as auto-scaling or segregating hot data, which is data that's frequently used by the app, versus cold data that is infrequently required data by the application that can then be moved to less expensive cloud storage options. So really rebuilding some of the more complex ones in a cloud native way that's going to actually meet the business case. So once we've determined the application profiles and strategy for each, then we group common apps and create a schedule of app migrations that takes into account dependencies, mitigates delivery risks, and minimizes business disruption, essentially as you would do in any transformation program. The strategy here is often to start with retire, as that should be the most straightforward and allow for reduction of existing environments. And second, replace the legacy applications with the modern SaaS versions. Once replaced with SaaS, the enterprise is now in the cloud, so we can begin to adjust processes to accommodate and start to take some lessons learned. Third, migrate non-mission critical applications, especially ones that require little, if any, integration to other applications. Consider starting with the lift and shift applications, as they're likely relatively easy to migrate and retest. And then we go after the retain and rewrap applications. And then finally, re-envision the complex core applications, recreating them in the cloud. So these are often the long pull projects. In fact, you might, when you go and create the overall cadence of the cloud application migration, the iterative approach that we're talking about, we might take some of the more complex re-envisioning projects and then start them in parallel with a lot of these others, because you can still apply the lessons learned along the way, but they're going to take longer if you're saying, okay, let's take this legacy core and let's grab this new modern platform, but then let's really rebuild it around with cloud at the core. That could take months, could take a year, it could take different times depending on what we're looking at. So we often end up running that in parallel. Another point to note is you could consider moving dev and test environments to the cloud first before even executing on the production cloud migration. Obviously, these are lower risk environments, but still can provide the same experience with replatforming execution that becomes valuable during the production migration. I know that a lot of my clients that I work with, we're already leveraging the cloud for maybe not in as robust, fully DevOps and fully kind of automated ways that we'll look to get to in the coming months or coming years. But a lot of development and testing is already leveraging cloud. So let's learn from that, and then let's apply those lessons when we do our core migration. Execution of the iterated migration plan is often likened to a migration factory, with apps moving down an assembly line through different posts. So post 1, executing the migration tactic for each application as per the migration plan that we just talked through. And then, of course, gate 2, thoroughly testing that new application to ensure it meets requirements and integrates appropriately with all of the rest of the solutions that it needs to have a real holistic end-to-end transaction. Perform comprehensive functional regression testing as well across that application and all the others that it's integrated with to make sure that everything continues to work as it needs to, and we can move on to the next step in our program. And then, of course, performance testing is necessary. I mean, the cloud's going to be, usually by its nature pretty performant, but we've still got these end-to-end transactions. We've got data hopping across networks now, so performance is paramount. And then, of course, penetration testing to validate that all of our security requirements are met. And then, of course, another thing to keep in mind, not just technology, but executing the change management. Now, change management both for the IT organization that now, is going to host this this application now in the cloud, and then also business users that are going to maybe access it in a different way or now have new applications that they have to work with as opposed to the old. So finally, with the new or rehosted applications running in the cloud environment, we monitor and optimize the apps while applying continuous learning to the next wave of our cloud migration. So that's how we create the strategy, and then how we our methodology for creating an iterative migration path. So with that, I'd like to hand you over to Rayshawn, who will discuss an EY platform to accelerate your journey and put the cloud at the core of your operations. Rayshawn?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Dale. So as we look at this next slide, and I think just to maybe provide some context, as Dale explained, internally, globally, within our firm, the transformation that we're going through from an IT perspective in order to enable all the benefits of the cloud and those capabilities. And then at the same time, being able to look at our offerings in the marketplace and what can we do in order to take those and in a more nimble, flexible, secure way, bring those to our clients and accelerate the return on the investment that these clients are looking for in the marketplace to be able to take advantage of those capabilities or new capabilities. I think the one thing that we are doing and we have done over the last couple of decades is really just been implementing these core systems, right, within both P&C and life within our clients' environments. And as we have been maturing over those last decades, over the last 6 to 7 years, these systems have matured from a core system standpoint and the software vendors that are out there, both not just from a platform perspective, but within the capabilities from a rules and from an architecture in order to be able to leverage some of these things as they mature in the market and as clients have matured on how to leverage these newer technologies. And so what we did, we essentially created what we said was our Insurance Nexus platform. And so you can see here, back in about 2012, we said there's got to be a better way that we can lower the total cost of ownership, that we can bring a different methodology, and that we can provide value in a more streamlined, more flexible environment so that, as insurance companies continue to evolve, as these third-party technologies, around the InsurTechs continue to evolve, there is opportunity, to be able to plug these into the platform. And so think about Insurance Nexus as insurance as a box. And then as you look at this business architecture, there are a few things that we look at, right? So you can see at the top there is the value chain that focuses on, upfront from the product development to the marketing distribution, and then you get into the underwriting and policy administration, the billing, the claims, those core operating platform capabilities. And then at the same time, there are corporate functions such as HR and general ledger that needs to be supported. And so what we've done is we've partnered with software companies in order to leverage the various capabilities that they have within their platform, but then at the same time, build other capabilities around these core platforms and bring those into a cloud environment. So good examples, as you can see, around the marketing distribution, being able to take advantage of some of the CRM capabilities that are out there and bringing those both from an integrated way and in the market from a cloud perspective, being able to plug those in. The same thing when it comes to distribution management, when we're talking about, the interaction between, the agents, and being able to look at the ways to strengthen those relationships, either from a captive or independent perspective, being able to look at how we appoint or license new agents, how we look at how we strengthen the commission, and incentive management aspects of that agent. So there are things that we've done around the peripheral of the core in order to bring those capabilities to bear. At the same time, we are looking at other capabilities from an InsurTech perspective to be able to bring those capabilities quickly into the ecosystem of an insurance company and provide those capabilities. So some of those, as we look at how we do that in a nimble manner, as you can see, we've got the Digital Enablement Platform, or DEP, that, as Karen talked about earlier, is a way to leverage, from a microservices and the API layer, being able to plug those in and being able to do that in a manner that, gets us, extracted from our legacy environment. And then I think at the same time, as we look at implementing, the core system and some of those capabilities within the cloud, we have the capability to provide the ongoing, hosting and managed services. And so the hosting provider being supported by Microsoft in their Azure environment and leveraging all of those capabilities, and then at the same time being able to care and feed for that system ongoing support and enhancements as it continues to evolve. And then I think as we look at kind of the coupled piece of the core system and in the cloud, as I mentioned, we have our digital engagement platform. And so one of the things that we continue to see is the evolution of these InsurTechs out in the marketplace, and not just, whether it's around the portal capabilities or whether it's around the Internet of Things and devices. We talked about artificial intelligence and, what's going on with machine learning in data lakes and how do we, leverage that up. It is something that we are, have created a digital enablement platform in order to leverage the capabilities and that architecture. And so, there's a little bit of an architectural or conceptual slide, but I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is really be able to extract a layer from the legacy and or the cloud solution and implement and quickly bring either products or these other digital capabilities or data capabilities into the platform, as well as enabling capabilities for our clients as they move to the cloud. And then I think the other thing is, as we looked at the capabilities within some of the key assets we built, these are just a few examples of what we've done around the different components. So for example, with our Insurance Nexus, you can see the 16 products that are there today and ever evolving. So whether it's around personal auto and homeowners and motorcycle, watercraft, the same thing when we start talking about farm and workers' compensation, some commercial lines with BOP, our business owners, and commercial property. These are our capabilities that, from a product perspective, we're continuing to expand. And then at the same time, as you look at the capabilities around integration, so as we talked about, the long pole in the tent and the complexity of these projects, are really around how it needs to connect within the enterprise and the internal and external services. So as part of our DEP, as part of our capabilities in order to accelerate these projects, is building and leveraging assets within, kind of the ecosystem that we need to connect these platforms into from a cloud-based standard and aspect. So you'll see here things such as document storage and general ledger, portal, some of the things that we've done around e-signature, the agency components of the upload download, some of the comparative rater capabilities. Obviously, when we talk about the financials with bank and credit card and stat reporting, being able to feed those things. So these are all assets that EY has built over its several years of doing these projects in order to leverage. And then, as you see, obviously from a data perspective, being able to leverage the data, pulling it out of the core systems, pulling it out of these other capabilities that you're leveraging from a solution standpoint, and putting it into a landing spot that you can, either leverage from a reporting perspective, and you see some of the examples of the reports here, around accounts receivable and past due reports and claim details, the unearned premium summary, etc. But also then, as you're pulling in other capabilities from third-party services, you have all this access to information. So a lot of times, it's not lack of data, it's really lack of being able to use that data to gain insights. And so these are things that EY has built over the years to be able to leverage that, in a much more structured, with the governance and the controls and the capabilities, the trusted way that business and IT can leverage that to make decisions as they move forward. So I think with all that, I think I just wanted to make sure that from where Dale took us from kind of how do you start in the migration and the things that need to be considered, as Dennis talked about Azure and the platform and the capabilities that it brings to the marketplace. Then as Karen, obviously, with the capabilities around what we're seeing in the marketplace, the questions that everyone was asking that's on their mind, how do we get started, how do we move, and how do we start this journey to be able to cost effectively and from a secure and quality and low risk perspective, how do we manage that as we go through this journey? And then, bringing it from the standpoint of some of the solutions that EY has built based on these demands in the market in order to really, start to enable these capabilities and to make sure that, as you all start to think about your next steps in your transformation, some of the lessons learned and making sure that, as you think through those things, being able to avoid those pitfalls. So with that, I think it's a quick summary and some of the capabilities there. But Karen, I'll turn it back to you if we want to try to open it for any questions.
Yeah, thank you. We did have a couple questions come in, so I'm going to start actually, Rajan, with you, and that is really about people are wanting to know what are the typical pitfalls that you see with carriers making the cloud journey? Is it they're trying to move too much? Are they not moving fast enough? Are they not thinking strategically? What are the typical pitfalls they're running into?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a number of different dimensions as you would expect, right? Because there's a lot of complexity when, as Dale mentioned, as we go through, considering how to move to the cloud. I think the one thing that needs to be clear is as we look at what capabilities are you trying to drive into the cloud, and making sure you've thought through that value chain on what you want to bring to the cloud from a business capability, and then obviously from what that has to be supported from the infrastructure back-end capability. And so there's a bit of decomposition that needs to happen there in order to understand what pieces will be into the cloud, and then still having that connectivity within the enterprise. So, making sure that that is laid out is critical. The second piece is, even though you're moving things to the cloud, there are still a number of different, not just security aspects, but interactions between some of the existing architecture, the communication protocols, the orchestration of these various, both business and technical services that need to be understood and be connected and understand, how that will be connected so there's not any performance degradation. And so, that's another big piece of this. And then I think the second, obviously critical piece is, how will this thing start to get onboarded within the cloud, and what capabilities you're bringing, and then what are the things that need to be sunsetted and moved into the cloud. And so I think one of the things we often see is that you're just creating another system in the in the entire ecosystem, and that's something that as we all know, we want to do more with less, and so we have to be clear on the sunsetting strategy, and how that will move through the life cycle as you migrate and mature within the cloud.
Do you see people actually take advantage of the cloud to actually assist in the sunsetting, that, okay, we might need some of this information around for quite some time. Cloud is a great place maybe to put that kind of information, just removing as much as they possibly can from that on-premise, almost legacy type of server environment that they're working in today? Yeah,
there's definitely considerations that need to be made around those transactional, capabilities and the data that resides there versus the archival and how it will be accessed. How things will be need to come together from a decision-making capability. So yes, there is a lot that needs to be considered from how that moves back and forth between the cloud, between current client environments. And then more importantly, how that gets tied together, to feed other critical systems such as premium and stat, regulatory reporting, right? All these things have to be thought through, as data passes, these different areas.
Another question we had came in, I'm just reading it now. There was a lot of emphasis on digital, actually when I was doing the discussion, and do I see I quote, a digital cloud journey being different or complementary to a core system cloud migration? To me, the difference there is the digital path and digital transformation absolutely requires strategy. And it's a holistic strategy. It's an inside-out and an outside-in strategy. It's thinking through the entire operation and where will it be on its digital journey. I have to say I see a fair number of core systems that are being migrated. To me, those are transactional in nature. I think there's got to be greater purpose when you think through that. It's a step in the process. It is not the process. It's not the end of the journey. It's really thinking through how you can capitalize on those assets now being available in the cloud. It's like the first step forward. And so I find working with insurers, the digital aspect is really that much more holistic thinking through of their journey. And the core system is an element of that. But I have to say, insurers are now getting to the point, the tipping point, when they're thinking cloud and they're thinking core, they also have to be thinking experience and customer experience. So it's not just a one solution or one transaction or one project. It's a greater thinking through of that type of initiative. Does anyone else on the panel have a perspective there about that digital journey and cloud hosting?
Hey, this is Dale. I would say it's complementary as well, right? So often you'd see, you'd go and say, okay, well, I've got my digital, I want to become a digital insurer, and I've got people working on my digital strategy, and you're often looking at things like you said, customer experiences, and what kind of new customer engagement can we create, and how can we go from the insurer that is, you're basically dealing with us only when it's time for your policy to renew, and you have a quick look at your premium, and then it just renews, or it's during a claim and it's in a kind of a difficult point in our relationship with the customer versus, let's leverage digital to be able to try and create new value adds with our customers. If we've got telematics into the car and we say, okay, the car's going to get, you're driving it and we know where you are. So we say, hey, we believe that you're going to this appointment. So here's where you're going to park your car. And find you a parking spot and remind you where it's at, like different kinds of interactions with the customers. But to create those experiences, to bring them to market more quickly, that's where you turn and you say, okay, well, my cloud migration strategy, my cloud migration program, which was, is often looked at as more of an IT thing. Well, that's complementary to your digital insurer initiatives, because when you get onto the cloud, then obviously, if you've implemented it properly and you've leveraged new modern platforms and applications, you've got DevOps so you can spin things up and down really quickly, then that's where you can say, okay, let's experiment. Let's experiment with some of the new digital technologies. Let's get some of these things out there really quickly, learn, iterate, and then be able to bring to market these new customer wowing kind of experiences. So I look at them as kind of as separate but complementary.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for that perspective. And I think you hit on a couple things that I know earlier in the presentation as well, talking about this real shift in our DevOps environment. I think it's just about, pace and speed, and we've talked a lot about it, but at times we didn't have technology or infrastructure or environments that could support the pace. Now we're having to adjust, because now we do have those capabilities, whether it be through modern core systems or it is the use of the cloud, and it's really our development methodologies have changed. And, we need multiple tracks going on at a time, and just the pace of change and the pace of required change really pushes us to have to think differently. And thank goodness there's technologies like this that can come and support this new way of computing and this new way of really hosting our applications. I'd like to thank the panel today, and just bringing it home, there is the follow-up that will take place. Copies of the presentation material will be made available to you, as well as a white paper that was jointly created by E&Y and Microsoft on the carrier's journey in the cloud. If you have any further questions, please submit them. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending the webinar today. We appreciate your attendance, and you all have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.